I think images of President Nixon meeting with Chairman Mao Zedong and Premier Zhou Enlai in 1972 are etched in the minds of all of us who, indeed all Americans who had the chance to watch this on TV. It was seen as a remarkable event. Live images of this were beamed throughout the United States and indeed throughout the world. And it was, needless to say, exciting. It really changed things dramatically, and it gave people in this country a vision into China that they had never had before. China, for many Americans, was considered like going to the moon. And President Nixon, I think, brought it home and to a degree personalized it for Americans, as did his visit there for many Chinese. And while the United States and China share a great many common interests, and the relationship has produced a significant number of mutual benefits, we must also candidly recognize that there are several areas in which our positions diverge and where we do not prioritize the same values. To address differences and to build on our common interests, our economic relations over the next 40 years may well have to be framed very differently in important respects from those of the past 40 years. The U.S. must continue to strongly assert our core economic positions in such areas as intellectual property rights, trade secrets protection, and the necessity of a level playing field and non-discrimination in trade, innovation, and in investment. But in doing so, we will probably achieve most progress in these and indeed many other areas if we frame our positions where possible in ways that dovetail and are consistent with the objectives China has set for itself, and attempt to make common cause with those in China who seek bolder reforms of the type we also advocate in China's own economic interest as well as in our economic interests. Our aim should be to encourage provinces and cities that want to distinguish themselves by creating better living standards and more jobs for their people to compete with one another to adopt world-class standards on intellectual property, treatment, investment, and many other areas of economic reform. But despite this breathtaking progress, the U.S. and China still have many obstacles to overcome. And therefore, I believe this 40th anniversary of the Nixon visit allows us not only to reflect on the past, but also to contemplate how we can move forward based on the lessons we have learned. Looking ahead to the next 40 years, we have an opportunity to shape the future economic system of the world and our relationship for the benefit of both countries. And I should add here that it is not only our relationship with China that will shape the global economy in years to come, but also our growing engagement with Asia as a whole through APEC, through our ties with ASEAN, through our economic relations with Japan, through the trade deal that we have just done with South Korea, and through the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is in the process of being negotiated right now. Our goal in each case is to strengthen mutual commitments to the global system of market-oriented rules, practices, and norms that are open, transparent, free, and fair. There are a number of ways to advance U.S.-China economic relations, strengthen the American economy, and help China to accomplish its own goals on the domestic front as well. And let me cite a few examples. One, increasing Chinese investment in the United States would help to balance our economies, contribute to domestic jobs and growth here, and support China's more outward orientation, its going-out policy. We need to encourage Chinese investment in the United States, and we're doing so through programs known as Select USA and the U.S. China Governors Forum. But we also need to be sure that Chinese companies do not compete here or elsewhere in the world using pirated intellectual property or by taking unfair advantage by utilizing subsidies and other government support that they receive at home. Lifting restrictions on foreign investment in key sectors in China would also improve receptivity in the United States and indeed in many other nations as well. And throughout the world, Chinese investment will be more secure if it respects local cultures as well as sound environmental practices and promotes transparency as well as accountability. On this and on other issues, we should make common cause with other countries who have similar interests. Another area would be ramping up agricultural trade. This would lead to more U.S. exports and help China to meet its food and security needs. The U.S. China Agricultural Symposium that was held in Iowa during Vice President Xi Jinping's visit is an encouraging sign of progress in this area. Another area is engaging China in the WTO and other multilateral institutions, and that will remain critically important. China's accession to the WTO has been good for China and good for the world. But just as China insists that others abide by WTO rules, so should Beijing. More broadly, it will improve relations with many nations and the trade opportunities for its own companies if it avoids practices that, as I mentioned earlier, may not be strictly illegal under the WTO, but which are inconsistent with the organization's principle of fairness and non-discrimination.